This is Major Stories. Good evening again. I am Joel Crossgill. As part of the government's initiative to reduce costs for small and micro businesses and to encourage small business formation, the Senate followed through on its intentions to forego over $1 billion in taxes with the repeal of the minimum business tax. However, there are calls for more to be done to relieve the financial burden being felt by an even greater proportion of the population. As part of the suite of legislation that will see the government forego over $14 billion in taxes, the Minimum Business Tax Repeal Act that would see businesses no longer have to fork out $60,000 per annum, regardless of whether or not the company is inactive or dormant, was passed in the Senate.
Small and medium business enterprises have always been a part of the backbone of societies, and they are a big part of this administration's thrust for economic growth and prosperity. The Act to repeal the Minimum Business Tax Act is an important part of this agenda because it reduces disincentives for formalizing business operations, and it makes it easier, Mr. President, to grow.
Meanwhile, Senator Andre Horton, an economist by profession, recognizes the significance of the new dispensation and praised the actions of the government.
Many small businesses have complained about this business tax, and quite rightly said, it was a big hindrance to small business activity, as well as how we orchestrate our growth and development pursuits through government fiscal policy. Mr. President, this bill today brings us to the broader notion of how do we use fiscal policy to engineer economic growth and development throughout the country.
Senator Lambert Brown pointed out that the People's National Party conceived the plan to repeal. He chided the government that it has taken 3 years to implement. He suggests that the tax repeal should be directed towards a larger portion of the populace.
In order to relieve the pressure on the poor, that the leader of the opposition has made bold to say, let us review the GCT rate. Our government moved it from 17.5 down to 16.5. It has stayed at 16.5% for too long.
The Jamaican language has been at the center of controversy, with many arguing that it should be made the official language of the island, while others firmly rubbish the claim. Prime Minister Andrew Holness recently stated that both languages have their place in society and should therefore be equally embraced. Christine Forbes reports.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says patois is an asset, a Jamaican's unique way of communicating. He says, considering the fact that patois usage is inevitable, steps should be taken to make the language more institutionalized.
There really should be an institute that seeks to bring structure to the language. I'm certain there are many studies now that have been done, and there is a thrust to have more books converted into the language to do what is necessary to make it an institutionalized language.
He says all languages are important and none should be used to the exclusion of another. And he doesn't believe there's an attempt to diminish patois. Holness adds that his problem lies in Jamaicans not being able to speak English fluently.
We have been defined as an English-speaking country, and our failure has been, certainly from an education perspective, not ensuring that our population speaks English. So it is not about in any way preventing the use of patois. I think government policy has to also be to ensure that our population speaks English.
He believes that the more languages Jamaicans are able to speak will be an asset to economic growth as it creates ease in communication, especially in the booming tourism industry. Christine Forbes reporting for CVM Live.
Crocodile attacks at Waves Beach and Hellshire in Portmore has raised concerns about public safety and security in these areas. The National Environment and Planning Agency is now calling on visitors and residents to exercise caution when in close proximity to the reptile's habitat. Khadija Thomas was in Portmore earlier today and made this report.
Crocodiles do not feed or harm them. The National Environment and Planning Agency is in the process of erecting more of these signs, warning the public to be aware of potential crocodile activity. This follows an incident earlier this month where 2 men were bitten by a crocodile and left with severe injuries at Waves Beach in Portmore. However, those who live in the vicinity say these incidents do not happen often.
The only time you see them on the road is when they are passing from forest to forest.
When our news team arrived in Portmore on Friday, tourists and locals seemed far from concerned about the presence of crocodiles in the area. They were too busy enjoying the sun and the sea.
We have always seen them, like when we have heavy rain, they come in the sea and do their thing and make a circle and go right back to the swamp.
Now, these are some of the areas where the crocodiles might lurk at night. However, the residents that we spoke with say the crocodiles will not attack unless they feel threatened.
The crocodile does is that it lives in the pond, and when the rain fall a lot, the rainwater pour into the pond and into the sea. So the seawater becomes a little more fresher. And so when the crocodile are catching off the fish, sometimes they stray.
However, one resident disclosed that since the crocodile attack, less persons are coming to the beach and buying from his business. But what can be done to ensure that residents are kept safe since they appear to be living in the reptile habitat?
I love them. There's some plans like develop this side of the beach and the north coast alone nice. And everybody have money for go we are watching Portland and them place. They want the people who live at downtown and in a Portmore area want to come on beach. Yeah, the government can do something like set up on a beach them and make people can swim nice and make sure see a crocodile in the water and make never come search the water too.
Khadija Thomas, CVM Live.
Creating a safe and secure Port Royal with a vibrant local economy is big on the agenda for 2020. The Port Royal 2020 Sustainable Development Project, a Government of Jamaica initiative, comprises the input of several government agencies. Mandated by Prime Minister Andrew Holness, the Urban Development Corporation UDC will be spearheading the project. Aladdin Love reports.
The need for adequate housing, infrastructure development such as sewerage and economic opportunities has long been the predicament of Port Royal residents.
Through agencies such as the National Land Agency, the National Housing Trust and the Housing Agency of Jamaica, provisions are being made for the addressing of the housing needs in the area. Of course, you heard from our National Water Commission President, Mark Barnett, as well as from Professor Shirley, on the efforts to be taken relating to the wastewater and sewage.
Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Senator Pernell Charles Jr., adds that wastewater management, garbage collection and solid waste management are top priority for the further development of the town. A better road network is also on the agenda.
We want to also highlight the fact that the improvements to the road network will be coming. You heard that from the NWA, Mr. Rose, who is not only a messenger today, but bringing good news. And we have to say to you that the economic opportunities are definitely going to be coming for the people of Port Royal through this development.
Pernell Charles Jr. notes that the safety and security of Port Royal residents is paramount. Members of the security forces have reaffirmed their commitment to the prevention and detection of crime and the protection of life and property in Port Royal. Pernell Charles says this development will pave the way for redevelopment efforts across Jamaica. Despite the improvements to come, the councillor for the Springfield Division, Lorraine Dobson, couldn't help sharing her concerns.
Yes, we are happy to see that we are one step closer. But I can't help but speak about the infrastructure. Because there are time and time again we have tried, and it stops at airport. And we plea for it to come from airport into the town, and we are promised.
She warns Colonel Charles Jr. that she will be holding him to his word. Aladdin Love for CV.